Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Prime Tale English. It's truly wonderful to have you here. Take a slow breath with me. Now, imagine a secret that has been hidden for hundreds of years, a story about a land so vast, so rich, and so full of life that people crossed entire oceans just to reach it. Today, we're going on a journey through time. We will explore a story that shaped the modern world, a story of dreams, struggle, courage, and a powerful new beginning. This is the story of the United States of America, how it began, and why it still matters today. So find a comfortable place, relax your shoulders, and let the story unfold. Before we begin, if this is your first time here, welcome to Prime Tale English. This channel is your calm, peaceful space to learn English through real, meaningful stories that stay with you. If you enjoyed today's journey, consider subscribing and leaving a comment below. Tell us where you're listening from. We truly enjoy hearing from you. Now, let us travel far back in time to a world before the United States even had a name. Long before cities, roads, or flags existed, there was a vast and beautiful land. This land stretched from cold northern mountains to warm southern shores. It was filled with wide rivers, tall forests, green valleys, and endless open plains. And this land was not empty, it was alive. For thousands of years, people had lived there. They had their own languages, their own traditions, and their own deep understanding of the earth. Today, we call them Native Americans, or indigenous peoples. There were hundreds of different nations: the Cherokee, the Sioux, the Iroquois, the Navajo, and many others. Each group had its own culture, its own knowledge, and its own connection to the land. They understood the rhythms of nature, the rivers, the seasons, the animals, and the plants. To them, the land was not something to own. It was something to respect and to care for. For thousands of years, they lived in balance with it. But far away, across a vast and dangerous ocean, something was changing. In a place called Europe, people were becoming curious, restless, eager to explore. They wanted new lands, new goods, and new trade routes. And soon, that curiosity would bring them to this quiet and beautiful land. What would happen when two completely different worlds finally met? That is where our story truly begins. In the late 1400s, Europe was filled with a spirit of exploration. Ships were improving, maps were becoming more accurate, and bold, sometimes reckless, men were ready to sail into the unknown. In 1492, a man named Christopher Columbus sailed west from Spain. He believed he could reach Asia by traveling across the ocean. He was mistaken, but what he found instead changed history forever. He arrived on islands near a continent Europeans had never known. He called the people he met Indians, believing he had reached India. He had not. Yet his journey opened a door, and once that door was opened, it could never be closed again. After Columbus, more Europeans followed. Spanish explorers moved through the southern regions. French explorers traveled through the north, and they all saw the same thing: a land rich with resources and opportunity. News spread quickly across Europe. A new world existed across the ocean, and everyone wanted a share of it. But the people who already lived there, those who had called it home for thousands of years, were never asked. They were given no choice. And that is a truth we must always remember. History is never told from only one side. Among the European powers, England was determined to build something permanent. In 1607, English settlers arrived and founded Jamestown in present-day Virginia. These were not kings or warriors. They were ordinary people, men searching for gold, for opportunity, or simply for survival. But their early days were incredibly difficult. The land was unfamiliar, the climate was harsh, food was scarce, disease spread quickly. In the first year alone, more than half of them died. It was a time of fear and desperation. Yet, those who survived refused to give up. Slowly, painfully, they learned how to live in this new land. Some received help from Native Americans, who taught them how to grow crops and find food. Without that help, Jamestown might not have survived. And yet, even as they accepted that kindness, the settlers continued to take more land that did not belong to them. This is one of the painful contradictions in this story. A story of courage and survival, but also of loss and injustice. More settlers continued to arrive. More towns began to grow along the eastern coast. Something new was forming, something no one fully understood yet. Over the next 100 years, the population grew. By the early 1700s, there were 13 colonies along the eastern coast. A colony is a land governed by a distant country. In this case, all 13 colonies were ruled by England. The people living there were called colonists. They came for different reasons: religious freedom, land, opportunity, and some were brought against their will. Enslaved Africans were forced into this land with no freedom, no choice. This is one of the darkest chapters in American history, a painful injustice that caused deep suffering and left lasting scars. Yet, for many colonists, life in America felt different. The land was vast, opportunities seemed real, and slowly, a new identity began to grow. People no longer saw themselves only as English. They began to think of themselves as American. They built communities, towns, farms, schools, and churches. They created local governments where ordinary people could have a voice. Something rare at that time. Life was not easy, but it held possibility. And as the colonies grew stronger, a question began to rise. If we can govern ourselves here, why should a distant king control us? By the 1760s, tensions increased. England had spent large amounts of money on wars. Now they wanted the colonies to help pay. Taxes were placed on everyday items: paper, glass, paint, and tea. But the problem wasn't just the taxes, it was the lack of voice. The colonists had no representation in Parliament, no say in decisions. And so a powerful phrase spread: no taxation without representation. In 1773, protest turned into action. In Boston, colonists boarded British ships at night and threw tea into the harbor. This became known as the Boston Tea Party. It was more than a protest. It was a message. And it was dangerous. England responded with stricter control, but instead of stopping resistance, it made it stronger. In 1775, fighting began. British soldiers, known as redcoats, faced colonial forces. The first battles took place in Lexington and Concord. Some still hoped for peace, but others were thinking ahead. One of them was Thomas Jefferson. In 1776, he wrote the Declaration of Independence. It declared that all people are equal and have the right to life, liberty, and happiness. On July 4th, 1776, the colonies declared independence. The United States of America was born. But freedom had to be fought for. Under the leadership of George Washington, the army struggled. Winters were brutal. At Valley Forge, soldiers suffered from hunger, cold, and disease. Many died. Yet they endured. Help arrived from France. With support, the tide began to turn. In 1781, victory came at Yorktown. The war ended. America was free. But building a nation was just beginning. In 1787, leaders gathered to create a system of government. The Constitution was written, establishing laws and a balance of power. In 1789, George Washington became the first president. And when his time ended, he stepped down peacefully, setting a powerful example. The nation was young and imperfect. Slavery remained a painful reality. But something new had been created, a country built not on a king, but on an idea. And now, my friends, we reach the end of our journey. The story is not simple. It contains both greatness and pain, and that is what makes it real. And you, yes, you listening right now, you are on your own journey, learning something new, moving forward step by step, just like those who came before. If the story stayed with you, leave a comment and tell us your favorite part. Subscribe to Prime Tale English so you never miss a new story. And remember, keep listening, keep learning, and keep going. You're doing wonderfully.